Welcome to Ground Up Growth, where we share entrepreneurial insights, business strategies, and personal growth lessons to help listeners build success from the ground up.
Welcome back to Ground Up Growth. Today's guest is Mr. Cameron Hartley. Cameron is the owner of Hartley Equipment Company right here in Gluckstadt, Mississippi. He sells everything from mulch, weed eater string, tractors, riding mowers, blades, oil, gas, everything.
List goes on and on, baby.
Constantly adding to it. Cameron, thank you so much for coming on, man. We're excited to unpack your story. I know you've got a good one and ready to hear about it. So
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Paul. Hannah, appreciate you having me on. So this is a first for me. But yeah, I'm Cameron Hartley, born and bred here in central Mississippi, lived in the Madison County area pretty much since I could walk. And just started from a young age, kind of learning that I liked being independent, like kind of doing my own thing. And
where'd you go to school at? High school?
I was spent half my life in public schools, and then the other half from middle school, I think 7th or 8th grade at MRA. And I think there's a big benefit of that because I was able to network with so many different, not only friends but families, and
Yeah.
I've seen that benefit throughout my whole life of basically meeting my whole community as I grew up, and then now with the business that I'm in, it kind of know your community very well.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's powerful.
How old are you?
34, about to be 35.
Ooh.
Yep.
Married, you got kids? How many kids you got now?
Yep, married to my wife Morgan. We've been married going on 11 years. Had to think for a
Yeah,
second.
you had to think about
So
that.
I got 2 boys. They're my whole world. Got Easton. He's 9, 10 this summer, and then I got a 3-year-old named Hayes. He's 3 going on 15. He's my little heathen.
Wide
So he keeps
open.
me on my toes, and he is going to be my payback child. So I got Easy E. Easton's cool, calm, and collective, smart as a whippersnapper, and then Hayes he's a Tasmanian
Isn't that
devil.
crazy how they just? It's like everybody has like split.
Yep.
And it seems like
personality.
it's always either the second born
Oh,
or the
yeah.
second son specifically.
Yeah, it's something.
It's like
That's all
always.
I
Oh
know.
yeah, that's the same way with us.
Yeah.
Our youngest is, just doing swan dives off the crib, and all the things.
It's
So,
unbelievable.
all right, did you have a job growing up? I know you did, but tell us about it.
Yeah, first job I ever had was working for a company. I think I started at 14. So first job I ever had was McGraw Rental. So I grew up with the McGraws. They're really well known in the Jackson area. They were kind of on the forefront of the rental industry in central Mississippi, and really kind of idolized them. I wanted everything that they had as far as their store and the way they did things. And the owner would pick me up at 14 at 5:15, 5:30 in the morning, and we were unlocking the gate at 6 a.m. and then I was hitching a ride back with him when we closed, or getting a parent to come get me. And that was my first taste of work, and seeing that I was addicted, hooked, couldn't get enough.
Yeah.
And kind of went above and beyond and realized that this is the path I want to go. I wasn't a sports guy. I was a work guy, and that was kind of, I guess, the first little stepping stone of what got me to see what a future could look like if I hustled and made something on myself.
Did you go to college?
I did. I went to Mississippi State, scholarship, graduated. Smartest guy in my class. Couldn't
Come
beat
on,
them
man.
girls though. I had a couple of ladies that beat me, but school just kind of came naturally. I didn't really have to study. Could memorize a test and go in and ace it, and then an hour later I didn't know nothing, but it looked good on paper. So that's all that mattered. But yeah, I went to state. At that time I already had a booming landscape business. I did it all through high school. I was the kid that brought his lawn trailer to school. They gave me a special parking spot, so I was out of the way, and that bell rang. My buddies were going to football and baseball and this, that, and the other, and I was going to cut grass. So,
So when did you start cutting grass, or when did you start
so
that
let's
business?
back up. So 14, worked at McGraw Rental. The following year, I got my hardship. I took care of a facility out in Brandon, about 23 acres. They'd been doing it in-house, and they gave me the opportunity to just come out there and use their equipment and do all the facility maintenance. They had a guy that had been doing it. It would take him probably 5 to 7 days to cut it all, and I got in there and had it cut within 2.5 days every week. And they were like, "Well, what are we gonna do with you?" And I was like, "I don't know. I'm here to work." So they were doing some remodeling at the time on some of the buildings, so I started hanging sheetrock and running plumbing and tearing out walls, and learned a lot that summer. I was with the older group of guys, a little rough around the edges, and they didn't treat me like a 15-year-old, and I think that's probably the best thing that could have happened to me. But there again, learned that I liked seeing a project come to life, liked seeing the completion of it. I liked going above and beyond, and I liked the challenge of coming in and them having complaints of their in-house guys taking over a week to do something that I was able to cut by more than half, and be more of an asset to them on other areas.
So you were how old then? 15, 16?
Yep. And at that time, I'd already started cutting some grass.
So you had your hardship, so you were able to drive yourself there.
Yep.
Wow.
And I'd already started cutting grass a year before at 14 with my buddy. We had a beat up golf cart, a hand-me-down lawnmower, a handheld blower, and a weed eater that would crank on about the 20th pull. And we got about 3 or 4 yards that summer and thought we were just killing it, and that's really what built, in a sense, my empire was starting like that.
Yeah.
So,
Where do you think you got that work drive from? Like, what were your parents like?
so my mother, I watched my mom hustle her whole life. She owned several different businesses. She was a hairdresser, and I watched her bust her tail and, work those 14, 15-hour days. And she owned her own salons. I got to see the good, the bad, the ugly, and everything in between, and learn how she coped with that, how she overcame it, and still was able to be the best mom on earth. So I was able to see that, she kind of laid the groundwork for me of what that looks like, of being a parent that owns a demanding business, that deals with the general public, and still is able to, take care of her family and prioritize. So
That's huge.
Impressive.
yeah.
That is. All right. So you got the landscape deal going. All right. So I'm going to ask you when you started Hartley Equipment Company. When did you get out of the landscape and start? But then I'm going to go back.
Yeah.
So
let's keep going. So I progressed from the golf cart and push mowers and taking care of that facility, and went full time into cutting grass for myself. Me and my buddy kind of decided that it would be best for me to keep going to working on my own, because it got to a point where we decided that would be best, because I was doing most of the work and all that. But granted, his father allowed us to get going and helped us, get our first lawnmower and all that. And man, I took it and ran with it in high school. I think when I graduated, I had 40 accounts, which was a lot to balance for a kid going to school full time and still, having a social life and things like that. And it came down to it that's what I wanted my life to be. And
you were just ate up with work.
yeah. So Mississippi State was the only option. I wanted to go be the landscape architect, the landscape contractor. And at the time, they had a dual program. It was a 5-year degree to go be a LA and a LC, landscape contractor and landscape architect, and extremely demanding. And I was totally up for the challenge. And I approached all my clients that senior year, that summer, and said, I'm going to Mississippi State. I would need to keep these accounts to help, my family be able to afford to pay for school and all that. And I think I ended up keeping 18 or 19, and I would come home and work them. My father at the time would also cut them, and that was, what got me through school. And got up to Mississippi State, kicked tail at school, and top of my class freshman year, got to, really get involved. And then, second semester rolled around, and with that program and as demanding as it is, you really don't dip your toes. You just dive in.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very invasive on a lot of levels, not only a social level. Being in college, you want to go play, and all your buddies are majoring in business, and they're not
Right.
doing nothing. You're
Right.
like, dude, I have a project due in 2 weeks, and they're telling me it's going to take 100 working hours, and I'm like, that ain't even mathing. So, anyways, it boiled down to that second semester. We got into doing some extensive drawings, and I found out I was going to be doing golf course, neighborhood designs, and all that. And I said, man, that's not what I really want to do. And I absolutely suck at drawing. So my roommate at the time, he was in the program. He's just naturally artistic. Well, we had to draw streetscapes. We had to draw people. We had to draw section cuts of a hardscape, layout of a building. I could do the geometrical stuff, but anything organic, I was out. So, but I was really good at English. So I wrote all his English papers, and then he would do all my drawings.
Trade off.
And, gosh dang, it would take me hours on those English papers. Need 20 minutes. Hey, I did all your drawings. I'm done. I'm like, well, you give me a few more hours, I'll catch up to you. But it was a great trade-off for me because, I wanted my work to look legitimate. But, going into that second half, the second semester up there, man, I think I had a 3.8 GPA. I was still one of the top in my class, and I came home and told my folks that I was wasting their time. I mean, I was wasting their money, and I was contributing, financially to my school stuff and all that, and said, I'm wasting y'all's money and time and my money and time. I'm coming home, and I was able to score a really big contract with my landscape company that I still had going, and it justified me moving home because I knew that I would immediately be able to afford to make a move like that.
Yeah.
And I told them that I wouldn't let them down, and my mom supported me 100% and said, we know you won't. Heck, I had aunts and uncles and cousins and friends and tell me you're crazy, worst decision you ever made. But when it comes down to it, if I would have stayed in school those 5-6 years, I would not be where I'm at today. And
Right.
I've had that discussion with young guys that are growing up. There's a young guy in town that I've dealt with since he was 14, Shelton Kincaid. Kincaid's Fine Clothing. That's their son, and I've kind of mentored him, and they know my story very well. And it came down to him coming in my office one day and asking my opinion on what he needs to do with school, because he had a booming business, way more than what I'd had in high school. And I said, Shelton, I think you're crazy if you go to school, and his mom and daddy did not like that answer, and they called and told me that. And I said, well, your son's going to come in here and ask my opinion. I'm going to be honest with him. And, lo and behold, he's got a younger brother named Harper, and Harper's been, he's at state now, and they're both up there getting their degrees, and they've got a guy running their business. And it will benefit him greatly in the long run to have that degree, but that just wasn't for me. I didn't like being tied down, and, ultimately I didn't like being told what, when, and where I had to do something. I wanted to do it on my own. So
Right.
I didn't really like that structure of the school deal. And so moved back from state. I think that was spring of 2011. Well, if you're going to be legit as a landscaper, you've got to be licensed with the state of Mississippi. And what that is, it's a horticulturist license. And that just puts you on a different level than your chucking of trucks and your mow and blow companies, and elevates you to the ability to score big commercial jobs and compete with the big guys in town. Well, I didn't have enough hours from state to get that. So the option at the time was to go to Hines Community College in Raymond. They had a landscape program out there, which basically built kids up for 2 years to send them off to state.
Yeah.
Well, I did the opposite. So I went there and was like, man, this is ridiculous. I've got to do this. But I met some great connections there. One of them is Miss Martha Hill, who is very involved in the green industry even to this day. They've actually shuttered that program at Hines, and she's moved on to other things and is still very involved. But Needless to say, I was able to do a semester out there while running like a chicken with my head cut off, running my landscape business, and had hired my first employee. But I got I got the hours I needed to go take that test. And at 20 years old, I went back up to Mississippi State to the plant bureau and walked in there and took that test and became the youngest licensed landscaper in the state. So
Wow.
really cool. They did a little write-up on me and all that. And I hit the ground running. That was it. It was landscape or bust. And I was determined that I wasn't going to, halfway do it. It was all or nothing. And my goal was to build the biggest, baddest landscape company I could have. And I wasn't scared to walk into the big guys in Jackson's office and ask them, how do I do this? What do I do? Help me out. And being young, they lended a helping hand. And I was able to, really kind of create a good camaraderie with the local folks. And we, had understandings that we didn't step on each other's toes. And I think I did that for 3 years and realized, I bought my first, where my original location was for Hartley Equipment. I bought that property in, I think, 2013, and was going to put my landscape company there. That's why it was on that little side street. I didn't need major frontage. I didn't need, wasn't going to be a retail setting. Well, the place I did all my business with for my lawn maintenance company, where I bought all my equipment, they were going through some trouble, had some financial difficulties. The owners having some health problems, and I could see the writing on the wall that I wasn't going to be buying there much longer. So I think at 23 or 24, I called Exmark, which is the brand I have on my shirt today. That's the zero turn line one of them that I represent. And I was like, hey, I want to open an Exmark dealership in Gluckstadt, Mississippi. And they laughed me off. Really? And I was like, whatever, I tried. My landscape company was booming. It was more than I could handle.
How many yards, put that in perspective.
I had 4 crews. I think at the height of it, I had 16 employees. I probably had, I think at the height, 115, 120 properties, but I had quality properties. I got some customers now that have 200 plus properties, but I had some cream of the crop stuff, especially commercial. I had commercial properties where a 4-man crew was there for 2 days and things like that. And then, I had landscape. I had 2 maintenance crews, and then I had a landscape crew, and then I kind of had a catch-all crew that just did everything in between. And it was a beast. It was a lot to handle. I was contracting out swimming pools whenever I got out of it.
Were you cutting grass physically yourself during that time, or were you just managing people?
No. I had moved past the cutting grass myself and was managing people, and that was very, very difficult. I was still young at the time. The folks that worked for me were young. Their priorities revolved around, getting that paycheck on Friday and living for the weekend.
Yeah.
And, it was just the mindset. It was, who can you hire to run a weed eater for $9 an hour? And, luckily, because I had younger guys working for me and they had lots of friends, and we just had a steady pool of, come in, if you don't work, you're gone. I think one year I hired and fired 34 folks, and it was so bad that I wouldn't even know people's names. They were gone. But, but I had my core group. I had my crew leaders. And so, I think at the height when I had 16 employees, I was like, Lord, if 12 of them will show up today, I know that we can make it through today. So,
man,
but
that had to just wear on you.
It
would wear on me. I couldn't do it.
It was psychotic. It really was. But I overcame, and advice from other lawn companies, I transitioned to a 4-day work week. That way, if we did have, a day where nobody wanted to come to work and we could only run 2 crews out of our 4, we had a Friday to make up. So we ran Monday through Thursday, and Friday was our makeup day, not only for, the issue, the issue being if somebody doesn't show up, but also rain days. So,
yeah. Man.
It was a monster.
That's way more that goes into that than just, hey, can you cut my grass?
It really is. So it's a lot involved with it. And, you're serving a very needy clientele.
Did you
folks that
have
were-
any, and we can get into this more on the second episode, I guess, where we dive in deeper on stuff, but I'm curious because you were so young at the time and you'd built up. I know you mentioned most of your employees were younger, but did you have older employees? And if you did, was there always, it seemed like there would be a challenge with like, oh, he's a young guy.
Yep.
Like, because I ran into that in real estate, being the young guy. Like, nobody wants to sell your multi-million-dollar farm with they don't want to entrust a 25-year-old, even though he truly knows what he's doing.
Yep. I've
Uh,
dealt with that my whole life. I
Yeah.
still deal with it.
Yeah.
But it used to really bother me. Nothing really bothers me now, it seems. But I've kind of been there, done that. But yeah, I dealt with that. I did have some older guys work for me, and but they never really panned out just because of that mentality.
Yeah.
And these older guys, they didn't have their lives together either. They were kind of down on their luck, desperate for a job, and
Yeah.
just kind of that kind of
for sure.
lifestyle. But so
All right, so you built it up. You had 115, 120 yards, 16 employees. How do you transition? What happened? Did you get burnt out? How'd you
no, I didn't
transition?
get burned out at all. So I saw the need for an outdoor power equipment company in Gluckstadt. Like I said, I was 24 at the time, so that would have been in 2014-ish, 2015. They were like, no way, Jose, and I was like, okay, no harm, no foul. It was worth a try, and kept doing my deal, kept rocking and rolling. Well, like I tell folks all the time, I'm blessed in so many ways, except for my body. I've got bad bones. I've had back surgeries, hip surgeries, 14 different injections, this, that, and the other. So although I was not totally out there physically on the landscape part, 10 hours a day, I still was out there lifting, doing, moving, going. And I knew that my body was wearing down. And I'm just not one that can sit back and watch. I'm not a pointer. I'm a doer. So December 2nd of 2015, we find out we're pregnant with our first son. And I'm like, holy smokes. We'd been married 6 months, maybe. Yeah. And then December 4th, Exmark calls and says, hey, we want to give you a shot. And I'm like, what? And they're like, yeah, don't you have a building in Gluckstadt where you can, put a dealership? And I was like, no, I don't have anything. Well, if you can have one by spring, we'll give you a shot. And I'm like, well, it's early December. That's impossible. And they said, well, if you want it, that's our requirements. And they said, we have one other thing. I knew I had to have a handheld line of equipment. They said, you have to convince Steel to come on board as well. So I was like, all right, let me figure out how to do that. And
So you owned the land, but you had no building.
no building. That was that spot off Yandell Road there in Gluckstadt. So
And you had 3 months to get
yes,
a
which
building.
was not feasible, and they knew that, but I think they just wanted to keep the pressure on me, and I work well under pressure.
They wanted to see
so
how committed you
I
were.
was. Yes, I'll have it, and then of course you just ask for forgiveness.
We're
later.
actually framing today, sir.
Yeah. Concrete should be wrapping up by lunch and this, that,
Funny
and the
you
other. But-
asked.
So, I already had a set of plans approved by the county for my landscape building. So I had that in my back pocket. I didn't have to go back through that process. Well, I reached out to the county and I said, hey, I need to start building like right away. And they're like, well, you're good. And I said, well, I need to change my whole building. They said, well, that'll take about 60 days and however long your architects take. And I was like, I don't have 60 days. And they said, well, what you can do is not change your footprint, but you can go up. And I was like, well, I don't need a 2-story building, but I kind of do because I'm out of room with my, 5,000 or 5,500 square foot footprint that I had. So I was like, all right, we'll go up and add a second story. Let's get the ball rolling. And 6.5, 7 months later, we had a building opened in mid-June of 2016.
Golly.
And that's when I opened Hartley Equipment, and I still had my landscape company going. But when we made all our agreements in December, I immediately began non-compete. I was no longer bidding. I was no longer taking on jobs. I was no longer doing anything that could possibly step on any toes in any form or fashion, because I knew that my customer had to be the landscape contractor.
Right.
And luckily, like I said earlier, I'd already developed many relationships in the industry over the years. And
So you called Steel and got Steel on board.
yeah, I got Steel on board, and they were like, whatever, okay, we'll see what happens. And of course, I'm like, I promise y'all, I will not let you down. I can't afford to let you down. This is going to be, you know, the rest of my life. I'm going to commit to it. And so I opened up, and it was me, the man that had been running my landscape crew, and then I had another gentleman that came on board, and he was kind of my saving grace. A lot of stars aligned for me to get him. I never met him, but he had worked at another dealership, and he had left, and he fell into my lap with 13 years of experience in this business.
Wow.
And I credit him for helping me get a jump start that, you know, what we were able to do in a year would have taken, you know, 3+ years.
For sure.
And, so, you know, everything in my life's been a lot of stars aligning, a lot of blessings. And, you know, we opened that place, even though with his experience, we didn't know what the hell we were doing. I mean, it was like, what do we do? I still had my landscape company going.
I mean, that's
Yeah,
a
who was
totally
running the
different
landscape
animal.
So I had the landscape company going. I had downsized it big time. It was just 2 crews, no more landscape, just lawn maintenance. And I was steadily trying to figure out, well, one, I had to make sure the equipment company was going to work.
Right.
Because landscape's my backup plan. I know that works. I was making a wonderful living financially on that.
Yeah.
But I knew that wasn't sustainable long term with my health issues and all that with my bones. So I got approached almost immediately by one of my larger customers that's in town with Madison Landscape. And they said, we want to buy your book of business. And I was like, well, I can't do that just yet. But they wanted to know what my intentions were. And I said, well, that is what I intend on doing, but I need a good year under my belt. And we circled back in early 2017 and started getting the wheels in motion. And I think spring hit it like Valentine's Day that year, kind of like it did here.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I was so committed to customer service and my customers that I said, this is too much. Spring has sprung too quickly. I don't want to see anybody drop the ball, and I don't want to see my customers not get the attention they need, because we have not had any time to transition. So I pulled back, said, we'll regroup. Well, that first spring in 2017, the equipment company, it exploded. And by July of that year, I called Madison Landscape and I said, either we can talk, or I'm fixing to call all these folks and I'm out of the business this week. And they're like, no, hold on. So, you know, hindsight, my value, my business kind of went from up here to here. But at that point, it wasn't about the money. It was about taking care of what I'd built and not making myself look like a fool.
Right.
And making a, you know, clean, you know, what we called a merger. Because I was still involved for 6 months on retainer and all that, but them guys were pros. They knew what to do, and they stepped in and did the deal. And
That's such an interesting dynamic, because to your point, like your landscape company is your customer base for the equipment company. Mm-hmm. So, you know, your direct competition, to your point, like you retract on, I'm not bidding on anymore. I'm not stepping on anybody's toes. I'm not clouding the water. But it's like you either got to be in or out.
Exactly.
And it's like, I need to know if the equipment company's going to work. But once I just know, I know you, but like I can feel the drive and the motivation. It's like, once it clicked and you're like, the equipment company's going to work. Mm-hmm. It's like, I'm all in.
Oh yeah.
I'm all in.
Yeah. It was no turning back then. So yeah, once, I think, fall of 2017, I was totally out of the landscape game and all in with the equipment company. And, you know, at that point,
was that like a rejuvenated passion? Like because we talk about career burnout all the time, because I don't care who you are. You're going to go through a part of your career where you're like, I'm tired. I'm tired of cutting grass. I'm tired of whatever. But if it's like a change up for people like us that are entrepreneurs and love the challenge, you love to see stuff come to fruition, you love all that stuff, like having a big challenge on your plate of like, bet you can't grow an equipment company. Like, did you have just like a big new passion?
Oh yeah, there's always a fire burning in me. My passion from the get-go as equipment company was that, some of these other dealerships that have been here in town for years were convinced I couldn't do it.
Ooh.
And they were telling everybody they could that I'll give Hartley 6 months, he'll be out and broke and all that. And I was like, oh boy, I'm fixing to tear y'all up. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, when I sold the landscape company, the first thing that happened is I got really bored because I was like, well, I have nothing to do now. You know what I'm saying? Like I've been running like a maniac, all these years and then balancing 2 companies for over a year. And I was like, what am I going to do? So that's when, wheels started spinning in my head. And of course, at this time, it wasn't just, me and my first 2 guys, Hunter, who's my shop manager, and TJ, who'd come on board with all those years of experience. We had since added Scott, that's our front counter guy, and Blake, that's been in the shop with us. So at that point, I had, a group of 4 of us, and 3 of those 4 have been with me ever since. So, I mean, the longevity there. But at that point, we were growing the equipment company. When I hire somebody, I hire them to do their job so I don't have to do it. And they were doing their deal. And I'm like, well, heck, what am I going to do? So I was like, I'm going to start a landscape supply side because when I had my landscape business, I kept a 18-wheeler trailer of pine straw at the equipment store just for my company. Well, we started selling out of it, and I was like, crap, we can't keep straw in stock. So I decided to go that route with the equipment company. And I mean,
So you're
with
basically
the landscape supply side.
So you're basically vertically integrating. I mean, you start the equipment company, and then you just these ideas to bolt on landscape supply. Because I mean, I know you're in the rental business. Y'all sell tractors. You rent. I mean, like all those are bolt-ons to just being an Exmark dealer.
So my philosophy, and we can touch base on it a little bit later, but as always, how do I capture the customer that's already there? And also I want to bring in more people, but like I've already got the guy in my store, but he's coming here to buy this, but then he's having to come over here to buy this, and then here to buy this. I'm like, heck, I can just keep him here. He can just do it all right here.
Yeah.
So that's been how I've grown my whole book of business, is how to capture and cater to the folks I've already got in there to really, evolve into that one-stop shop.
Right.
And so in the fall of 2018, the Landscape Supply Center opened up there on the same property at my old location on what we called the Hill. It was a little bit elevated from everything else, and we started with all your bulk materials, mulch, soil conditioners, rock, dirt, sand, everything like that, and of course pine straw. But we also dove off into sod. I bought a Freightliner, a flatbed truck, a Moffett lift, hired a family friend to come run that, and like anything I've done, it was a new business. I knew it was going to start slow. I mean, even the equipment company was slow for the first 9 months, and but I didn't let that get me down. I knew that it would come about, and now here we are. Been doing it for 8-9 years now with the Landscape Supply, and it's a very integral part of my company, and just took it and ran with it. So, and we've expanded on it.
So you're at a new location. I mean, you've totally moved. You got a new, bigger location with.
So at the old, let's stay at the old store a little bit longer. At the old store, I'd continued to add brands. I took on Skag Zero Turns, which is the other, top dog in the outdoor power industry with your your zero turns and things like that. It's what your commercial guys use. I took on Echo Trimmers. I took on a couple of other little brands here and there, and really tried to stick to those top tier brands, name recognition, and brands that I used in the business.
Yeah.
So I knew I could stand behind them. And within a year of being at that location, I knew like, ooh boy, this is not going to work long term. But, you know, you got to ride it out. So, you know, especially wasn't going to work long term when I was in 2018 adding landscape supply, which took up, you know, acre and a half or more of the property. And then in 2019, I was like, you know, I think I'm going to try rental. So I grew up with a family in the rental business. My customer is already here. Let's get into rental and see what happens there. And at that point, we were maxed out on Allenbrock Drive at the old store. And that's when in around 2020, of course, COVID hit. That was a huge catapult for my business. I was able to.
It did good. You did good.
Yes, I was able to, you know, leap up the ladder of, you know, where we were as a business and really elevate us to a whole different level. And that's when I began kind of wheels in motion of, okay, I can't keep going at the rate that I want to go, because I'm like unhealthily entrepreneur. And like I said, I get bored like really easy, like starting to think I'm bored now, and I'm having to bring myself back down for my wife's sake so I don't get into nothing else. But I was like, all right, I got to get a new location. So that's when kind of that began. And then, you know, we rode out that COVID wave and you know, it really never ticked back down. We just have only grown from there. And in 2021, I was able to, you know, we had grown so much, I was able to bring some folks in and, you know, hired a guy then, Brooks, who's now my general manager. And he was able to really kind of come in and help me kind of manage the business aspect of things and turn it from just a, you know, a mower shop to, you know, a well-oiled machine, and start kind of having some, you know, some things in place and some processes and procedures. And, you know, and we just kind of had to make do, knowing that, you know, bigger things are on the horizon.
Yeah.
So,
man, that's awesome. You built a heck of a company, man. That the whole story is super impressive. Makes me want to go
it
out
really
and
is.
grab a dadgum weed eater or something. But man, yeah, that's really cool. Y'all's new shop is very impressive. How many acres is that it's on?
6.2.
Wow.
Yep.
And y'all
We've
do
already almost outgrown it. I just expanded. I had an acre and a quarter to the west, going towards I-55 that we had not touched, and I just fenced it in about 3 weeks ago, and it's full of tractors and equipment. So,
all right, we're going to wrap this episode up. This will be the end of episode 1, and then we'll continue with episode 2. We'll circle back with Cameron on some more with his business.